Welcome to my brand new podcast, Mayhem, hosted by myself, Danielle. And joining me along the way on each episode are some amazing guests talking their personal journeys of parenthood, whether it be through younger kids, teenage kids, or adult children, and some professionals along the way as well that can potentially help some of you. I know I've learnt loads already from these people, so hopefully some of you do too. And I really hope you enjoy it, have some laughs along the way. I'm sure there'll be some funny stories in there. So yeah, all I ask is please subscribe to whatever platform it is that you're listening on. It really helps the podcast. And then hopefully I can bring some more amazing guests on there. So yeah, thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy the show.
Deep breath.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Mummy Mayhem podcast. Joining me this week, I should say again, because this is actually the second time that we have recorded. The
Maybe
first
third or
time,
fourth.
oh my god, the first time massive technical, well, I say massive technical difficulties. It was all going really well. We had to like pause the recording, and then the second lot of recording I went to like merge together and it just disappeared. So then I was like, shit. But yeah, so this week is Donna back. So you should have had this episode like at the very beginning. But unfortunately, IT issues. It didn't
Wasn't meant to
happen.
be.
No, it was meant to record a better one, I feel. I mean, the first one was really good, but I take it as no, there was something more. Maybe there was something we didn't cover in the first one that needed to be covered.
Yeah,
So yes,
definitely.
thank you so much for coming back on Donna.
No problem.
Um, and Donna is a therapist and a hypnotherapist. So we're going to be discussing things like all the things about the hypno and the therapy, and how she can help you and in your parenting journey and help your children as well. So plenty of hints and tips from her, and she's a very experienced mum herself with three children. So yeah, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit about you, your family?
Yeah, so I have three children, and I was just saying to Danielle, I'm coming out of the teenage years. So I've got a 21-year-old and an 18-year-old, nearly 18 in a week or so, and a 12-year-old. So the first two are girls, so that's been interesting. And the third one is a boy. So yeah, so I am a therapist and a clinical hypnotherapist, and from my own experience and journey, I decided to help parents and caregivers to be able to have phenomenal coping skills on this crazy wild journey of parenting.
And you explained parenting very well there, because it is like crazy wild, so rewarding. It's so many emotions in one, isn't it?
Yeah,
And you
yeah,
can experience all them emotions in like one day, probably in an hour in some cases. um and I think we put so much pressure on ourselves as parents to have it right all the time, that we
yeah.
probably don't help ourselves with the stress, because we're constantly thinking, oh, we could do it better. But that's where you step in and you can teach us coping mechanisms that we can use to keep it
Yeah.
under control.
Yeah, so this is what happens. We get all caught up in our own emotions, and sometimes we're having an argument with a teenager, and we can feel our own inner teenager feeling not heard and not seen, and feeling lonely and feeling just overwhelmed and not on sometimes just not knowing how to communicate with our teenagers, because as I was saying to you, when we have our children, we have this maternal instinct, and when they're little, we can help them, and that's all we ever want to
Mm.
do as parents. But we can help them when they're little. We can give them a bottle, we can soothe them and cuddle them and watch a movie and give them hot cocoa and give them
Mm.
Calpol. Well, yeah, like when they're teenagers, you just can't help them. And it's a lot of frustration, and it's like you're just the words are, it's just chaos. And that's coming from us as a parent, just having to change ourselves, and it's a big
Mm.
shift. I find people struggle with to that's when they are stuck with their teenagers, especially not knowing how to communicate with them, not knowing how to help them, especially if they have any mental health issues or any disabilities, and just this world for teenagers is also so challenging. So it's just a lot for a parent, and it's a huge responsibility. So I help parents just to look inside themselves. As they say, the best way you can help your child is to actually look inside yourself and heal yourself. Healing just meaning letting go of your own insecurities, your own triggers, your own traumas. And a lot of us, when we're communicating, we're like overreacting, whereas we really kind of just want to respond and be calm and listen. But when you're in high emotions, that isn't always what happens, and it can just be very stressful.
Yeah, and it is, you hit the nail on the head there. When you're because I feel myself, like when I'm arguing with Olivia, I mean, she's just turned 13, and I feel like it is almost like an overnight change in attitude, emotions, like everything. And obviously, like for girls, there's the periods and the hormone imbalance changing there, and it's a different ball game with like boys. But you find yourself when you're arguing with them, you do find yourself like thinking back to like when you was a teenager, and you
Yeah.
do feel like and I mean she's quite like me, so sometimes I do feel like I'm like arguing with myself. Some of the stuff she says, I'm like, oh yeah, I used to say that. um and it's really hard because you want to stay like calm and you want to listen to like what they're saying, but we was just having a chat before, and they think that they're adults already, and they're not. They're still tiny. They're still really young, like 13, 14. Like they're still really really young, and they don't realize that there is a world out there that is not very nice, and
Yeah.
that they need protection from it.
And
And
they're eager
when they're
to.
little, yeah, and that when they're little, like you said, you can do that. They let you cuddle you. They hold your hand when they're outside. You can, if they fall over and hurt their knee, your magic kiss will like make it all feel better.
Yeah.
But yeah, when they're teenagers, what do you do? Because they don't
It's
let
very
you.
tricky. Yeah.
They
Yeah.
just. Sorry, you can probably hear my washing machine going. I've just realised. I'm like, oh God, can you hear it? Oh God, that's even
Well, that's
better.
just
But
unusual.
yeah, life.
That's okay. We all don't even hear the washing machines going anymore as parents because it's just always on in the background.
That is life, isn't it? That's what this
Yeah.
podcast is. It's life. So part of the life is that is my weekends. Is like trying to get all the washing done because I don't have time during the week. But yeah, sorry, sidetracked off that. So what from your experience, because you got the two older girls and then you've got your son who's just obviously entering teenage years. Do you think there's like a difference with, because I've only got girls, so I don't really know, but do you think like there's a difference between like the girls and how you parented the girls and how you'll parent your son?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I just think girls' minds are quite different to boys. I mean, I don't know, but the girls are coming out the other side now. They're very independent, and I think they've kind of found their way. And then the guy, he's 12, but he just seems very easygoing and just very chilled. And maybe I'm being naive by hoping that he'll just breeze his way through secondary school. But yeah, the girls have had massive challenges in school, so um, it's been quite a journey. And from I've had to do a lot of advocating for them to keep them in education, so I help parents with that stuff as well because I've been there. But yeah, so like I have not had very good experience with school and education system around them, but hopefully I got them out the other side now and they're both doing well. And yeah, even myself thinking about him going to school kind of triggers me as well, because like that's what parents all kind of come from, triggers of their own experiences too, and we don't realize that
Yeah.
our children can bring up feelings and stuff that goes on from our own, how we were parented, I suppose, as well, can have a huge
Yeah.
impact. And especially if you have a couple, like how, you know, the husband was parented and how the wife were parented from two different backgrounds or two different generational blueprints, like that can all come into play in what you want for your kids and what you see and what you imagine life would have been for them. So there's just a lot going on with parents, and as I say, when you're kind of communicating in that high emotion and anxiety, and especially when you have children with disabilities and different issues going on, it just brings a whole new level of parenting, doesn't it?
Yeah,
As you well know yourself.
yeah. It just adds on like all extra pressure and extra stress. Like parenting is so hard anyway, and then like with a disability, it's just like another thing that you're just like, oh, how do I do this?
It's just another heightened emotion, isn't it? Like there's a lot of fear in around it, I think as well, like the unknown as well, like where
Yeah.
will they go? Will they get a job? Will they have a relationship? Will they have friends? So I work with a lot of parents who are kind of living in that fear and of the unknown. And yeah, it's just challenging, isn't it? No matter where you're coming from. Um, so you have had experiences of you were in that overwhelm yourself, weren't you, a few months ago?
Yeah, massively. Freya was diagnosed with epilepsy. So Freya is double amputee, and she's had heart surgery as well. And I dealt with all that like pretty well, I think. Um, and we've like coped with that fine. I think it was because with the amputations, like we know it's. Oh, it's really hard to explain. Like so she was diagnosed with epilepsy back in 2022, and I think with the epilepsy is the unknown. Like you were saying, the unknown. Like we don't know when she's going to have a seizure. We don't know how long that seizure is going to last. We don't even know what triggers that seizure. We don't know how she's going to be in that seizure because sometimes she's stopped breathing and gone blue. Is she going to stop breathing and go blue this time? It is the unknown. Whereas with her amputations, we know, okay, she's got amputations, she wears prosthetics or she uses a wheelchair. That's how she gets around. That's like sort of structured. With the epilepsy, it's so unknown. We don't actually have answers to any of our questions when it comes to it. So I think that played a massive part in it. And I used to be one of these people that tend to just like shove things in the back of my mind and just be like, right, I've got to get on with it. Like, this is it. I just got to get on with it. And not allow myself to be like sad about things. So when she was having her seizure, she'd had a seizure when she was like 2, due to having like a high temperature, so a febrile convulsion. And I didn't deal with that very well. I panicked a lot with that. But with obviously having epilepsy, she has frequent seizures. And at a point, she was having at least one every night. And they are during the night, which makes it it was making me like not be able to sleep. If my husband was working nights, like I'd be terrified of like being on my own, thinking like I couldn't cope with it. And even though like in the situation I was doing what I knew what I had to do. I knew what I had to do with the seizures. There's not much you can do with seizures. But I would just go into a state of panic. And even before she was having seizures, I was like panicking that she was going to have one and just like not shutting off. And that feeling of not shutting off, you're constantly exhausted. It is an absolute exhaustion. So yeah, having a session with you, and I couldn't believe that it brought me back to um, something that happened when I was so young, and something that I don't even think of, that's not even linked to
Yeah.
fits or anything like that, was causing so much panic. And I thought it was anxiety, but it wasn't. It was the thought of not being in control. And I think that's my biggest,
I think
not problem.
I think what your problem ended up being when we got into the root cause was not being in control, if you remember.
Yeah.
So it was like you had this anxiety around your daughter,
Mm.
um, which of course would be there, but it was gone to a whole new level. And like you were saying, even though you knew what to do, you had the tools, you knew the medication, you knew you had to sit with her for 30 seconds sometimes, you were going into this fight or flight
Mm.
overreaction and anxiety. But like I work with people for through their subconscious mind, there's something else. Like you knew logically that that you knew what to do,
Mm.
and that you needed to be calm and that it would pass and that she would be safe. And if she wasn't safe, that you call an ambulance. But
Mm.
there was something deep in your subconscious mind that was making you react in a really negative way, as you agreed, because you wanted to be calm.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
it ended up in something, when I done the regression therapy, it was nothing got to do with anything you ever expected it to be.
No.
Yeah.
I would have thought it would have been to do with like when she had a verbal convulsion. Um, but yeah, it wasn't. It wasn't even that. Like something that happened to me as a kid, and I guess that is probably that one of the biggest things that I've struggled with, and I'm getting a lot better now, and since having that session with you as well, a lot better of not being in control of situations. Like I have always been someone that has to be in control of every situation. So when something happens to me, so just before we had Freya, a year before we had Freya, I had an ectopic pregnancy, and I was very poorly. It ended up rupturing, and I lost a lot of blood and I was really really poorly. But I dealt with that because it was happening to me. Although I wasn't in control of the situation, I was in control. I wasn't in control of like the medical situation, but I was in control of like what was happening, sort of thing. It was happening to
Yeah.
me. It was fine. When it happens to someone else, and I've not got no control over that, and I'm not there to see the doctors, I'm not there to speak to them or whatever. Do get, I do get very anxious about it, and when I look back now, and the situations with Freya, and I'm so much better when she has seizures now. Like she had one last night, and it wasn't a very nice one, but I don't panic anymore. Like before, I'd be like really panicking, and you can feel your heart in your throat, and I'd be like sweating. But now I'm just like I I'm a lot calmer than
Mm.
I was, and it's amazing.
I know, because like as you were saying, you had all the physical symptoms when she had a seizure, like your throat was closing up, you were alone at night, you were feeling completely overwhelmed, and physical
Mm.
symptoms. And when we found out that it was actually about you not being in control, and then
Mm.
we installed these new beliefs that you could be in control of your emotions when you're not in control. I think that's the main thing that you got from the session, that gave you control in allowing something to happen out of your control. And
Yeah.
it's amazing how when you work with that in the subconscious mind and understand that's where it's coming from, all the symptoms just tend to quieten down. As I said to you, we need anxiety, because if she does need an ambulance, you need that to kick in. But when
Yeah.
it's there daily and you can't sleep and you're on your own, and it's just going to burn you out. So
Mm.
you were saying afterwards then that you just felt much calmer, but when you need to kick into action too, don't you?
Mm. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like I knew all of that, but my and the mind fascinates me of how it tricks you and makes you believe things, and like I had that session, it's a couple of months ago now, and I've since used it. So Michael's been in hospital having his appendix out, so he had to have emergency surgery, and I could feel myself when I was in hospital. Obviously, that hospital, we was in our local A&E, and that hospital brings back a lot of awful memories for me from when Freya first got diagnosed with epilepsy.
Yeah.
That's where I was, and I was on my own with her in A&E when she went blue and rushed into resus and on oxygen and things like that. So I have a real horrible connection with that place. So I'm like sat there, and then he's like whisked off down to surgery, and I'm on my own. I could feel myself like getting that feeling again of being like yeah, being really, really anxious and not being in control of the situation. I don't know what they're doing to him. I don't know. Like, I know they're professionals. That's their job. They're gonna like look after him. But like deep down, I'm panicking because I'm not there. I can't see what they're doing to him, and I was waiting for like 4 hours or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And then when I got home after all of that, I was just like talking to my friend, and she's like, "Well, why don't you use the recording?" Because I've listened to it a couple of times, and I just like hadn't thought, and I was like, "Oh my god, yes, what a good idea." So I put that on, and it just like I just breathed, and I was like,
Yeah.
"Yes, like it's okay." And I felt like I was able to deal with that situation a lot better because of like having that, and
Yeah, like it's a tool that you can use like the way so after the session you listen to that for 21
mm,
days and it really transformed your whole belief
mm,
around the anxiety and not being in control. But then after
mm,
that, things will happen in life, but you just decided to pop in the audio and it just grounds you back down, doesn't it? Because it just puts you back into your
yeah,
subconscious mind and it reminds you of all the
mm,
security and that your body is safe and that, it stops you from spinning out of control again, doesn't
mm.
it?
Yeah, it's almost like, like you take a deep breath and you like
Yeah.
just sigh, and it's like a relief.
Mm.
It just feels like that after, and it's only like 20 minutes long, and then afterwards you're just like, oh, I can relax,
Yeah.
like it's okay, like. And yeah, I think without that I would have just carried on
Yeah.
just panicking, and it's
Because our
not a nice
minds
way to live.
Yeah, our minds are always trying to protect us. That's what our
Mm,
mind always does. So we do tend to catastrophize things,
mm,
at times, and that's just from past experiences which you obviously had with Freya and hospitals. So you probably will feel triggered in those moments going forward with her as well. But like if you have the audio and the more work you do on yourself, it's a coping mechanism then, isn't it?
yeah, and you've got that forever, and it can just ground you again, and yeah, it's an amazing experience. I'm really grateful to have had it, because it's an exhausting way to live.
Yeah, that's what happens with parents. Like, it's just exhausting. Like, we're all living in fight or flight ourselves. Like, especially if you have two
Mm,
or three or four children, and it's just constantly, they're zapping your energy, or it's just a lot.
mm,
Even if you're getting on really well and they're in good form, it's just a lot. Like a lot. Obviously, parents have background stuff going on. There's divorces going on, separations. There's
mm,
financial burdens. Parents
mm,
have a sick parent, or they have their own depressions, they have their own physical illnesses. So it's just really important for parents to look after their own well-being. And I think for many years we believed that that was selfish, like my children come first. But the
mm,
only way to put your children first is to put yourself first. And that doesn't mean that you get the first ice cream in the fridge or that you get the first Coke in the fridge. That just means that you have to look after your own well-being. And we hear it on the internet all the time, but when stuff like this happens to you, you really realize, like that happened to me as well many years ago, that it's just so important that you have to be number one, as in taking care of your mental health, your well-being, yourself physically, to be able to endure this journey, which is so up and down, isn't it? Like anything can happen in a given day, like what happened to you guys um with your partner there a couple of weeks ago.
mm.
That just was out of the blue, I would imagine. It
Yeah,
wasn't part
yeah,
of
yeah,
that
it did.
plan that week, was it?
No, it was just, yeah, and it can change. It was funny because I was having a conversation with my daughter yesterday, just explaining like how life happens, life changes like within split seconds. Like it can be normal, and then something happens, and it can turn your world upside down. And
Yeah.
without looking after you, you do have to look after yourself. I used to think putting myself first in situations like that was selfish. I really struggled with the whole self-love and looking after, like taking myself off for a bath. I used to think, oh, that's selfish of me, like I should be doing the hoovering. Or no one's ever made me feel like that, but I don't know, maybe it's just like an internal thing. I think women generally have that internal, you're not allowed to do anything for yourself, everyone else in your household comes first.
Yeah.
And
I think a lot.
until I really struggled.
Yeah, I think just a lot of parents do. Like, there's guilt is part of the journey and part of the package,
Mm-hmm.
and it will be there. It just is what it is. So I think that you have to learn how to navigate the guilt. And, we all need a bit of guilt. We all need a bit of anxiety. We all need these things to keep us human and
Mm-hmm.
keep us empathetic and keep us real. But when stuff is debilitating, like guilt or anxiety or low mood or, physically exhausted and burnout, I mean, it just isn't possible. So
No, and
you
you're
just
not being
really
a good
do have to,
parent.
yeah, you just really do have to take those things into account. And I think, unfortunately, what happens with parents is it takes a crisis for themselves to realize that they need to look after themselves. Like, parents come
Yeah.
to me with like a chronic depression or a physical illness, and when they look back, they're like, I know why this came, because I wasn't I was just running around like a headless chicken for the last 10 years, and with lots of delving into lots of little bits of trauma. And I think as a parent, you just let the stuff wash away, like what you have experienced with Freya, like what you said, oh, I just got on with it, and she got the amputee, and she had the heart, and I just kept going and got on with it. But
Mm-hmm.
eventually that's going to catch up with you in some other form, whether it's a physical illness or a pain or a rash or a lump or a depression or
Mm-hmm.
something like that. So I think parents are learning nowadays.
Yeah, I think it helps. There's, like you said, there's a lot on the internet now of putting yourself, like parents putting yourself first. Like it's not selfish. It's a necessity. And also like you're not teaching. You got to teach your children. Like, our children learn from us. Like, so we want to give them the tools and teach them, like they need to put their mental health first. Like I was actually really proud of my daughter. She was stressing over about going to a party, and I was like, well, why are you going to this party? And she was like, oh, I feel like I have to. And I said,
Mm.
but going to a party, is that going to make you feel like shit? And she said, yeah. I said, well, why are you going to go somewhere that's going to make you feel like shit? And it was
Yeah,
almost like she just like switched in her mind. She's like, yeah, you're right. I'm going to tell them I'm not going. And all her friends were going to it. And she just said, oh, I can't come. Something's come up with the family. And I was like, I was so proud because I'd never have done that as a kid.
yeah,
Like, I'd do it now, but it's taken me like 32 years to get where I am now. Like, so I was so proud. It's like, oh, I'm teaching her something.
yeah, yeah.
I
Definitely. I
just
think
hope she like,
they see what we do all the time, and that's like they see
mm,
how we react, and they see how we react
mm,
to things, and they see how we respond to things, and they don't know they're actually doing that, but they pick up on all of that, like we did with our parents without knowing, um.
yeah.
So I think, we can teach them in more ways than, like, if we are looking after ourselves and being fit and healthy and taking time and all that, they'll see that that's what you do. That's how you need to be a parent, is to consistently looking after yourself. And like, that doesn't have to be going away for a weekend. It can be little tiny nuggets in the day. And I think online as well, it's another list to do, like do journaling and to write a list and organize your this and organize your that. And it's just not practical, and it's too overwhelming as another task and another chore. And if you don't do it right, you feel like you're not good enough. You're not a good enough parent because the other parents are all doing it better than me. So I personally think the tiny nuggets, you know, the little walk, even if you can stand in your garden for 10 minutes, like you say, listening to that audio for 15 minutes, you know, in the chaos, you just walk away and listen to that. Or if it is taking a bath, or I think just stepping away. Like I often am seen sitting in my car, I have this joke where I just like, you know, if it's a bit chaotic, I just leave the house and sit in my car with a cup of tea. And I just have to remove
I like
myself
that.
from the conversation or the chaos, you know, because it's going to turn into some irrational, you know, conversation that we don't need. So yeah. So whatever you do, just to keep you sane, but definitely just picking up on little small things. You know, we don't have to book a holiday. That would be nice too, but
Yeah.
it's the little tiny joys, you know, it's going up to the car and getting yourself a coffee and just sitting in the car in silence for 15 minutes, or getting out for a walk, or, you know, sometimes as parents we just need to be alone. We just need a little tiny bit of isolation. Not in a big sense, obviously we really need support and communication and connection, but there's so much going on around us that we just feel all the chaos, and we just sometimes need to sit still, don't we?
Yeah, there, you said about the car. There's something about sitting in a car I find really therapeutic. I don't know
I
why.
love my
I
car.
used to love it. I used to love it when the kids, if I'd get back home and it'd been like a hectic like morning shopping or something, and with a new baby, and I'd turn around and they were asleep in their car seat. I think, oh, I can sit here. Like I used to just sit in the car. Like sometimes it'd be
Yeah.
for like 45 minutes, and I'm just sat on my phone or just sat there, just like people watching out my window. But I don't know. I find it really therapeutic.
Honestly, that's what I do. I do it a lot. Like I just sometimes get in the car and, you know, everyone's safe, everyone's fed, everyone's happy, but I'm just feeling a
Yeah.
little bit, been on the computer all day and I'm just feeling a little bit brain fog, consumed, overwhelmed with, you know, tasks that I didn't get to. And I just sit in my car, go up to the shop, sit in the car park and just get myself a cup of tea and some chocolate and just like sit there. And it's just, that's my thing, to be honest. It sounds crazy, but that's what gets me through the day. If I can't access anything else like a beautiful weekend away or a holiday, I'm very content just sitting in the car and just taking a moment.
Yeah, and like you said, it's them little things. People do think like self-care is, or I booked a spa weekend, or that would be amazing. But realistically, like parents, especially at the moment with like the cost of living crisis and stuff like that, that we've all got to worry about, realistically, you're not going to get that. So do things like for you that are simple. It's like me and my husband trying to do date nights together when you've got kids is really difficult. So you just do like simple things, like even if it's just like watching a film and ban the phones for the night, or just something really little and simple. But they're the things that people should be like shouting about and celebrating, I guess.
Yeah.
But we tend not to.
They're the little things that just build up into the well-being, you know, like my one is just being
Mm,
in nature. So like every Sunday morning I go off with my partner and we just go anywhere into nature, the woods
mm,
or down to the lake, or, you know, and it just completely
mm,
reboots. And I just get to Sunday and know that that's the biggest escape. But like in between the
mm,
days, it's just finding those little tiny things, and whatever works for you too. Like if somebody doesn't like nature, or they don't like walking, or they don't want to run, or um it has to be something you like. And I think the other thing that's really important is to have, like, there's a lot of pressure on parents, and I think a lot of parents, like at the school gate and stuff, that they're not really being honest, and that's okay. Like, we all think every other parent is doing better than us, or looks better than us, or is coping better than us. So I think having a really close, even one friend that has children like you, or really knows you, that you can really have a rant with on the phone in the car and let all those feelings out. And you know, the way sometimes you say stuff to people and then you feel a bit, they don't really get me, or they mightn't understand, and I feel worse now for giving out or
mm,
something. So just having somebody too that you can really vent. Like, we all know we love and adore our children, but just sometimes we
mm.
need to let some stuff out that we're irritated by and annoyed by, and that's okay because we all are just human, and it's a lot.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely just it's definitely these little kind of coping skills through each day as we go on this long journey.
Yeah, and us doing it, like we've said, our kids watch us, so doing it is helping them. So you're doing two things at once. You're helping yourself, but you're also helping them because
Yeah,
one, they're going to get a better mum, and then two, they're learning how to do that for themselves. So if they ever have children or if they're ever in a relationship, quite often, like in a relationship, sometimes I've like will put him first like all the time, and I would not do anything for myself because I'd find it selfish or something like that. Again, not because no one's made me feel like that, but that's just a self inner talk to
yeah,
myself sort of
yeah,
thing. So by doing these things, you're showing your children, and in return they'll have better relationships because no one wants a relationship with burnt out. Like I'd go like, well, I was burnt out nutter basically. I went like a little bit crazy. No one wants that in their life.
no,
So yeah, you're teaching your children as well as helping yourself.
yeah, yeah, it's very important.
Go into how you got into therapy because you've not always been a therapist. What made you go into therapy and learn all about that?
Yeah, so I was in a different career, and I'd say about 10 years ago, I had quite a life-changing experience, and a few crises came at me at the same time as they do in life. Like everything comes with a big bang, doesn't it? It's not like one thing comes.
Mm.
And I think looking back at it, it takes sometimes a crisis to make you really believe in yourself and to get up off your knees and then go, okay, I've had enough and I'm going to change things.
Yeah.
So I ended up as on my own as a single mother, and everything changed. Finances changed, the home changed, the energy changed, and everything changed. So I said, when I got myself together, I said, well, why don't I just change my career and do something that I really wanted to do? So I was always fascinated by subconscious mind, by psychology. I always wanted to be maybe a nurse or a psychologist or a physiotherapist, but I just never got the opportunity. I just never got the opportunity and went on as we do, feeling like everything's fine, everything's grand. But I decided to start studying then, and I started studying subconscious mind and became a therapist and a clinical hypnotherapist. And it's just absolutely love it. When you're working at something that you love, it's so easy for me. It's like watching Netflix. I can just keep watching lectures and learning and fascinated. I was always fascinated by human behavior and people and men and women and children and why we're all different, and that everything comes down to feelings at the end of the day. Every single thing comes down to a feeling. So so I qualified, and then I set up Mind Me Therapy, and I decided I wanted to help parents and caregivers to be able to, sustain this journey. I'd also had experiences with my children with disabilities, and I had to, I was advocating to the schools, trying to keep them in education. I've had challenging journeys with my children through the mental health systems from very young age, young teenagers, from the healthcare systems. It's been a massive journey and challenge to keep them in education and to keep them going and to get to where they want to be. So just from all my experience, that overwhelming loneliness and stress, I just decided that I wanted to help parents like me. And I was lucky to have all the tools in my toolbox to, get myself out of places. And now I've learned how I want to live and, live how I want to be and be the parent that I want to be. And yeah, so I have the tools now to support parents, and it just thrills me. It's not like work to me. I just love meeting new parents and listening to their journeys. And yeah, a lot of it comes down to subconscious, fears, and that the mind is trying to protect us all the time from our own experiences and our own childhood. Um, yeah, so it just fascinates me, and I absolutely adore it. It's the best thing I ever done.
It's and like you said, it does take a crisis, I think, for us to be forced into doing
Yeah,
that. Because
to be forced into a crisis, like if things had stayed the same, I never would have went down that path and started studying. I wouldn't have got the opportunity. So in the looking back now, it's the best thing that like ever happened to me. Um, because I'm so content and inside, and I'm so fulfilled in the career that I'm in now. It's so fulfilling. I don't, it just gives me pleasure and joy. There's no stress in it for me. So yeah, it definitely does take a crisis. I've had that with my children as well, where it has taken a crisis for people to listen to us or for people to see what's going on. And that's not great. We don't want to expect that. But,
no,
sometimes it takes a big shift. At the time, I think we think they're very negative and they are scary. But when you look back after a couple of years, you can see that there was a reason, there was a need. It's like if somebody gets very sick and then afterwards they get better, they really respect their body and their mind. And if they never got sick, they would have never probably cared about that too much, which again comes back down
yeah,
to the parent just looking after their own well-being, doesn't it?
yeah, no, that's absolutely right. My dad, 6 years ago now, yeah, coming up 6 years, had a few strokes.
All right.
And I mean, my dad was a sergeant in the army. He's always like looked after his health, but he was in a very stressful job. We always said like he was always like longing to retire, like he was always waiting to retire, sort of thing, and make it not materialistic, but just making sure that there was like enough money. Always couldn't wait to retire, but we always said like, Dad, the second you stop, you're going to get like mega poorly because you're so stressed. Your job is so full on,
Yeah.
like you can't just stop a job like that. And then yeah, then he had a few strokes, which was like awful and terrible at the time. But now, like coming out of it 6 years later, he is well, he's fitter than me. He's at the gym every morning. He's like he's nearly off of all of his medication from the stroke, and he's doing amazing. And I think like, would he be living his life like this if he hadn't had the strokes? I said to him the other day, I was like, the strokes were like your warning. Like I
Yeah.
feel like if you get a warning, like you're lucky. It's a warning to say like, come on, you can like you've got to shift something's got to change. And I do think like, would he be living his life like this? Would he have, because he's retired now, would he have retired when he did if he didn't have the strokes? Like, and yeah, I try to swing it on a positive now, also because it helps like you if you're trying to see a situation positive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
it
it
does.
is like that crisis.
Yeah, like all those feelings, like when people have a depression or an anxiety, like it's literally the body screaming at you to tell you
Mm,
to listen,
mm,
and then if you don't listen, you'll go from anxiety to depression. And if you don't listen, you'll go into a burnout. And if you don't listen, you'll get sick. So
mm,
if we just really need to listen to our bodies, because all those feelings and signals are the body just telling you something has to change or something has to slow down. And it's like that with feelings, like we tend to avoid them and push them down, and I think we just all do as parents though, don't we? Like it'll be fine, it'll be, here in
mm,
Ireland we're like, it's grand, it's fine, people are worse off. But I think it's
mm,
very important to listen to your feelings, and that doesn't mean to dwell in them for a long time, but just listen and acknowledge it, and like, okay, why am I feeling like this? And feelings are like little children in a classroom. They're all inside and they're all trying to come out, and they just want to be heard. And as woo as that sounds, it doesn't have to be. It's just like, feel the feeling and just stop and think about what it's trying to tell you. And like when you listen to it for a minute, or when you figure out where it's coming from, they tend to melt away. Whereas when we push them down, they literally multiply. They multiply, and then for 2 or 3 years later, you feel kind of okay, and you feel like everything's feeling good, and then you have this chronic anxiety, and you don't know where it's come from. But it's come from all this suppressed, like depression is, suppressed feelings. So it's just so important to do all these little things daily, checking in with ourselves.
Yeah, and I guess like when you said that family's got it worse than me, that was something I said the minute Freya was born. I constantly said like, oh, it's okay, like it could be so much worse, like we're really lucky, it could be so much worse, that family's got it worse than us, or that family's got it worse than us. And it was sort of like invalidating my own feelings and subconsciously making me believe like, not that them feelings that I were having, that I was sad about, that's not right, you shouldn't be feeling like that because they've got it much worse than you, and like they're okay. It is, now I know like to listen to them feelings, and I don't dwell on sadness. I'm a very positive person. I always have
Yeah.
been quite positive, but more so now in my adult life. And now that I listen to the feelings and sort of say it's okay to feel like that, it helps so much. And I come out of a little sad part, I come out of it so quickly now. And it's,
Definitely. Like,
it's just easy to do
it
it.
doesn't mean you're not positive. Like, positivity comes from the likes of that, feeling those feelings. Like,
Mm,
there's a fine line with positivity. Like, you can if you just keep saying, I'm going to be positive, I'm going to be positive, I'm going to be positive, it's not realistic. And it doesn't mean that you're
mm,
going to be negative, but you're allowed to acknowledge the feelings. Like, I'm sad,
mm, mm.
like that was such a traumatic experience, and, not what you expected when you had this baby, how it would be, like the fantasy that we have of having everything as it should be. So it's just acknowledging them in a simple way, and you're allowed to have a day or two where you're feeling sorry for yourself.
Yeah.
And I always do believe people have it worse off, and they do. But it's not so much that you suppress your own feeling of sadness, of some grief, of some, just whatever comes up, just listen to it and feel it, and then go back and be positive, because it just actually feels better in the long run, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It's exhausting. Living suppressing feelings is exhausting. Like me and my husband have both done it, and it is just exhausting. And at any time, it's like one of them teapots that are just waiting to like explode. The ones on the hob that it gets too hot and it just explodes. And that's what happens, and it can happen at any time in your life. And it is a burnout of just emotions, and then you've got so many suppressed emotions, you literally don't know what to feel, and you like don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
um and yeah, I find it much easier now that I like listen and sort of like validate my own feelings, like it's okay to feel like that.
Yeah. And
And
like
then
just
yeah.
spitting them out and having a rant to a friend, or a cry, or really letting it
Mm,
all out, and then go
yeah.
into the next day. Yeah, it's definitely a positive. Sometimes we get like, and even though my father was dying last year, like, well, obviously we were trying to be really positive, but the reality was that it wasn't going to be great. So I kept saying to people, I'm not being negative, but I'm trying to be realistic, that no matter
Mm,
how much positivity we give to this, it's not going to be a good outcome. So there's the level of positivity, but there's the level of awareness and acknowledging feelings and allowing that, I suppose, isn't there?
yeah. And it's easier to deal with if you do it that way. It's a lot harder if you just ignore the feelings and pretend that they don't exist.
We
And
think
I
at the
guess that's,
moment that it's okay to ignore them in the moment. It's like,
mm,
it's fine. We're great at saying that, aren't we? It's going to be fine. It's
yeah.
going to be great. But yeah, we learn as we go through these experiences.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess that's one thing that I'm really trying to um push in my parenting, especially with my eldest, just a teenager full of all different emotions, doesn't know what she's feeling. And I'm like, that's okay. Like, she's crying and she's like, I'm sad, but I don't know why. I'm like, well, that's okay. Like, it's okay to be sad. Because when I was a teenager, I always just told myself, like, it's a different generation. We didn't really talk about our feelings then. I guess
Yeah.
this generation now of kids do talk about their feelings, and it's great. And us as parents talk about our feelings, which obviously helps them talk about theirs. And that is one thing that I'm really trying to push, that she acknowledges every feeling that she has, and to know that it's okay to feel all that, because you can go through an emotional roller coaster in a day. Like, you can feel all the emotions in one day, and like, it's okay.
Yeah.
That's
And it's like
life.
just not to feel it too long. It's like this balance. It's like
Mm,
feel them for a couple of days and acknowledge them, but then you need to move forward, because if we just
yeah.
feel all the bad feelings, we can just then go downhill
Hmm.
and then we can, you know, catastrophize then the feeling and all the
Yeah.
stuff. So there's like a fine balance between, acknowledging the feelings, speaking to your parents or your friends, and then moving on, moving out of it then, and waiting for the next roller coaster to hit you with a wallop, because that's just the way life is going, I think, at the moment, isn't it? You just have to
Yeah.
be prepared for the unknown and keep finding the sparks of joy in every day and in the kids. And I think when the kids are a challenge, I think we really just have to see those positive things in them, even if you've got, really, a very tall male teenager who's this presence now and he's angry and it's just a battle, or, a girl being dramatic. We just need to try and find the positive stuff in them, because we can just get bogged down and then lack of communication kicks in. So
Hmm.
yeah, it's all just a fine balance and a fine line.
Imbalance. And I guess you see it a lot with your work, like helping parents and helping kids as well in that cycle and getting out of that cycle. Um,
Yeah, like that's what a lot of parents come to me. The challenge is the communication is a big thing, because like that you can't help the child in the moment. Like you say, they're not going to school or something, teachers on your back, school's on your back. So you're obviously bubbling up with this anger and frustration. But and then you have an angry teenager coming back. But underneath anger is always a more vulnerable feeling. But if we as at our age can't express our feelings, how are they meant to express their feelings? So sometimes they're just a big ball of anger and they're just a big ball of, they don't want to talk, and we just have to find other ways to try and connect with them. And just, then we're triggered by, can be triggered by our own inner teenager. They don't care how much I do for them. Have you ever heard yourself been irrational back to your teenager? Like, you don't even care how much I've cleaned this house. Like, they don't care. They don't want to hear that. That's when I
yes.
walk away and I go, okay, I'm going to walk away now and go to my car and have a cup of tea.
Yeah, they don't care. They don't care about that.
Yeah, but they also don't have the capacity. I think we expect a lot of them. Like, we expect them to
Mm.
be efficient in the house and we expect them to know, but like their brain doesn't actually, they won't like to hear this. Their brain doesn't fully develop till they're about 23.
Mm.
So like there is a gap, so like there's like the front part of the brain and the back part of the brain. And the back is like the emotional part and the front is the logical part. And we as adults can, glide through the back and the front so our emotions aren't as erratic. But mostly teenagers or young adults, they're just they're just in the back of the high emotion, or they're in the front of the logic, and they don't have the fear when they're in the front. They don't have any fear, they don't care. So that's a genuine part of their development. So that's when you just go, why do they behave like this? Why are they speaking like this? They still don't have the maturity to, they're to navigate between those emotions. So they we do have to still look out for them, and we do have to still, mind them. But so that's where the challenge is, isn't it?
Yeah, we're most hated parents at the moment because we're putting in certain, like, not like rules and things, but certain measures, I guess, like just trying to protect her still, because she's 13, like it's a
Yeah.
baby
Oh,
in my eyes. So young, like, and the world is getting scarier and scarier. And she needs that protection still, but obviously in her brain, like, she doesn't. And we're the worst parents because her friends can do it and they're the same age. Why can't she? And I'm like, well, it's just different parenting. Like, we parent different to their parents. No one's right, no one's wrong, but this is how we're doing it. But yeah, it's a constant
I had an
battle.
interesting conversation which might give you a bit of a good feel good feeling. So I was talking to about my 12-year-old, and he wants to go on whatever his friends have, whatever apps on their phone, and I'm trying to kind of
Mm.
hold him back from having some of those apps. And then I was saying to my two older daughters, like, I don't know, I don't feel like I want him to have them, but his other friends have them. And I said, this is where the challenge comes in, because he's so good and sweet, but I might have to get a little bit more, you know, no, and then he won't, we haven't had to do that yet. And my 17, who's just 18-year-old now, she remembered herself being like that at that age. And she was a bit more insistent and persistent when she was that age. And she said now, when she looks back, she's grateful that I didn't allow her to do those things or whatever things I put in place. And she agreed that at the time she didn't like me for them, but now that she's 18, she's glad that I put up those boundaries. So that was quite mind blowing information to get from
Mm.
her. I was only last week, I was like, really? But then that gave me the courage to stick it out with this guy and go, "Man, we'll wait until you're 13 or something. But yeah, so they're,
Yeah.
it's just hard for them in the moment, because the world is much harder than we had it. Like, there is a lot of pressure on them.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, but what I normally just say is, I don't care what somebody else's family said they can do, because everyone has different rules for different reasons. And, somebody might have like a couple of older siblings, and they've already been through it. Like, this is your eldest, so it's your first time
Yeah.
to experience this. Whereas her friends might have a couple of older sisters, and their mom is more easygoing because they understand it more. So I just always say
Yeah.
to them, I don't care what such a body's mum said. That's not what you're doing. So, but it's
Yeah.
also
No,
giving
that's
truth,
it.
isn't it?
That's
I think to trust them too. I think to give them trust can shock them. If you let
mhm.
them do something that you wouldn't have normally, and you say you can do this, but these are the rules. And if they actually do it, well, then you like just praise the hell out of them, and you're like, well, that's what trust is. And if they just break it, well, then they broke it. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's the lesson that she's learning at the moment, is trust and broken trust and trying to rebuild trust.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
hard going for them and us, isn't it?
yeah, it's a whole different ball game, and I guess me and Michael are quite young as well. Like, I was 18 when I had her. I was a baby when I had her myself. So it wasn't that long. I say to her, 18 years ago, Olivia, I was your age. Like, that's not a long time ago. Like, yes, the world has changed, but the world hasn't changed too much. Like, we had social media and we did have that. I mean, it was MySpace and Bebo, but and
Yeah.
MSN, but we had them things. Like, I'm not stupid. I know what goes on online, and the world hasn't changed so much that I don't know what it's like to live as a teenager in this world, sort of thing. And I guess it's a positive and a negative. Like, maybe we're a little bit more protective because we're not naive to how the world is, because it wasn't that long ago that we was teenagers. But it's also good because we know, like, the dangers that
Yeah.
are potentially out there.
Well, that's what I think I got from my girls, which was great to have their support. Like
Hmm.
they know
Yeah.
more than me the dangers of the online stuff, like they're 21 and 18 now, so they know how dangerous it is online, and just, people, there's kids swapping pictures, and or just conversations, or screenshotting a conversation and sending it to their friends. I mean, they're telling me all this goes on. They're telling me all the stuff, and they're telling me to pull back as long as I can with them. So that was quite comforting to hear from them who's in it, and they find it overwhelming.
Yeah.
My 18-year-old finds it overwhelming, just the phone and the Snapchat and the Instagram and the demands, and that they can see your location, your friends, and if you said you were going to be at home but you're not, and why you're not coming out to a party. And like, she just gets it now and says to me it's very overwhelming. So yeah.
That's nice. That's a parenting win, isn't it? When you get them two on your side
Yeah,
and they're
not
out of the
always, not
teenage years.
always, but in
It's
that
nice.
conversation, it was very interesting, and it gave me a bit of comfort. They were like, don't let him have it yet. No way. And they were like, I'm not allowing him to do this or do that. So I was like, okay, I'll just blame you. So
It's like he's got three mums.
God love him. He
All
has
like
he's
protecting him.
three women up against him. God love him. His little boys, you know.
I could literally chat for ages. It fascinates me, like what you do absolutely fascinates me. And like I said, going through it myself, has been like life changing, because I'm not running on that exhaustion and burnout, like that feeling anymore. And it's
Great.
relieving. So if there are any parents out there that are struggling with it, or if you've got kids that are struggling, definitely get in touch with Donna. All her details are on this podcast for you to reach out to her. Um, one last question for you though, Donna. What would be one, if you could give just one piece of advice to a new parent, what would that piece of advice be?
To a new parent.
Yeah.
Oh, um, to a new parent. Oh, just start looking after yourself as your own individual identity, and, be true to your own beliefs, and, look after your own well-being and mental health from the beginning, and just incorporate that into your day like that, with those little small things, and don't get caught up in the perfectionism of parenting, because you can't have it. It's not possible to be the perfect parenting, and that the challenges
No.
come and you have to adapt. So just enjoy when they're small, and just roll with it, and just take care of your own well-being.
Yeah, it'd be so much. I wish I'd done that from the start. That is a really good piece of advice, because I wish someone had said that to me at the start. And don't feel don't feel guilty about it, because you'll get to like 10 years down the line and you'll be so thankful that you had them bits put in place at the
Yeah.
beginning. That's a great bit of advice. Yeah. No, thank you. It's been amazing
Thank you,
speaking to you
Danielle. We got
again.
there in the end.
And then we got an episode. Yeah, no, thank you. It's been great. But yeah, anyone wants to get in contact with Donna, all her details are on the podcast. So please reach out. It's been a massive help for me. So it can be for you as well. No, thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye, guys.
I just wanted to use this opportunity quickly to tell you about one of our amazing sponsors that we have on the podcast. They are a business called Mummy and Me Baby and Children's Wear. They are a gorgeous brand that sell the most beautiful products that you can have personalised for your children, and they are stunning. So for any occasion, birthdays, Christmas, Easter, Valentine's, everything, they do it. So check them out on their socials, on Facebook, on Instagram, and also their website, www.mummyandmebaby.co.uk. Thank you. Really quickly before you go, I just wanted to tell you about another one of our sponsors that we have here on the podcast, and that is the gorgeous Atta Children, the contemporary children's tableware company that's eco-friendly and sustainable. They've got brand new owners, so some really exciting things happening over there for them. So make sure to check them out. They've got the most beautiful designs, colours, perfect for the modern day living. find them on their socials on Facebook, on Instagram or TikTok, or on their website, which is www.attachildren.com. Thank you.